Hi, welcome to Ahmed's world. In the midst of a troubled era, when the Cuban people yearn for change, one man emerged as a beacon of hope. This is the story of the rise of the Cuban Revolution, led by the indomitable Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro, born on August 13, 1926, in Byron, Cuba, was a prominent figure in the Cuban Revolution and went on to become the Prime Minister and later the President of Cuba. Before the events of 1951, Castro's early life and experiences shaped his revolutionary spirit and determination to challenge the existing political order. Castro was the son of a wealthy sugar plantation owner, Angel Castro, and his maid, Lina Ruz Gonzalez. He grew up in a rural environment, surrounded by the stark social and economic inequalities that characterized Cuba at the time. This upbringing exposed him to the struggles faced by the working class and fueled his desire for social justice and change. In his youth, Castro excelled academically and showed a keen interest in sports, particularly baseball. He studied law at the University of Havana and became involved in student politics, joining anti-government demonstrations and engaging in activism against the regime of President Gerardo Machado. Castro's political views were deeply influenced by the writings of nationalist and anti-imperialist figures such as José Martí. He admired Martí's vision of an independent and sovereign Cuba, free from foreign interference. In 1947, Castro participated in a failed attempt to overthrow the Dominican Republic's dictator Rafael Trujillo. The experience further solidified his commitment to revolutionary action as a means of achieving social and political change. After completing his law degree in 1950, Castro established a law practice in Havana. However, his true passion lay in politics and activism. In 1952, he planned to run for political office in the upcoming elections, but his aspirations were thwarted by Fulgencio Batista's coup d'état, which overthrew the government and installed Batista as the country's leader. This event marked a significant turning point in Castro's life, propelling him towards his revolutionary path. The events before 1951 laid the foundation for Castro's revolutionary fervor and his commitment to challenging the oppressive regime of Batista. His experiences as a student activist, his exposure to social inequalities, and his admiration for nationalist ideals all played a crucial role in shaping his revolutionary ideology and determination to bring about a better future for Cuba. July 26th, a day forever etched in the annals of Cuban history. It was on this fateful day that a young lawyer and revolutionary named Fidel Castro would undertake a daring act of defiance against the oppressive regime of Fulgencio Batista. Motivated by a burning desire for justice and driven by a profound love for his country, Castro meticulously planned an assault on the symbol of Batista's power, the Moncada barracks in Santiago de Cuba. With a small group of dedicated comrades, he embarked on a mission that would forever change the course of Cuban history. In the early hours of that fateful morning, Castro and his comrades launched a courageous assault on the heavily fortified Moncada barracks. Their intention was to seize weapons and spark a nationwide uprising against the Batista regime. However, despite their bravery, the attack ultimately proved unsuccessful. Caught in the crosshairs of a formidable enemy, Castro and his fellow revolutionaries found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. In the aftermath of the failed attack, Castro was captured by Batista's forces and subsequently imprisoned. Though the attack on the Moncada barracks did not achieve its immediate objectives, its impact reverberated far beyond the prison walls. It served as a catalyst, igniting a fire of resistance and awakening the collective consciousness of the Cuban people. Castro's trial following the Moncada attack became a platform for him to expose the injustices and corruption of the Batista regime. In a powerful and impassioned defense speech, known as "History Will Absolve Me," Castro laid bare the grievances of the Cuban people and planted the seeds of a revolution yet to come. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but was released after 22 months under an amnesty. He wasted no time. In June, he goes into exile in Mexico, a fateful decision that would shape the course of Cuban history. It is in Mexico that Castro crosses paths with Ernesto Che Guevara, a revolutionary doctor from Argentina. Their meeting marks the beginning of a powerful alliance that would leave an indelible mark on the world. Fidel Castro's time in Mexico was a time of preparation and regrouping for the Cuban Revolution. In 1956, Castro and his comrades returned to Cuba with the intention of overthrowing the government of Fulgencio Batista. They landed on the southern coast of Cuba on December 2, 1956, and began their guerrilla campaign in the Sierra Maestra Mountains. With a group of 82 rebels landing near the town of Niquero, however, they were met by Batista's forces outnumbered and outgunned. They suffered heavy losses, forcing them to retreat into the Sierra Maestra Mountains. And only 12 men, including Castro, his brother Raul, and Che Guevara, survived. They retreated to the Sierra Maestra Mountains and began their guerrilla campaign. It was here, in this rugged terrain, that Castro, Guevara, and their fellow rebels would regroup and lay the groundwork for their guerrilla warfare strategy. Life in the mountains was far from easy. The rebels endured harsh conditions, scarce resources, and the constant threat of attacks from Batista's troops. However, their determination, resilience, and ability to forge alliances with local communities fueled their cause. Castro and Guevara's leadership skills were instrumental in sustaining the rebellion. Their vision for social justice and national sovereignty resonated with Cubans who were fed up with Batista's oppressive regime. The rebels' guerrilla warfare tactics were crucial to their success. They used their knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks, disrupt infrastructure, and gain support from the population. As time went on, the rebels' numbers grew, and their military operations became more successful. They struck at the heart of Batista's regime, weakening his control and inspiring hope among the Cuban people. In February of 1958, Raul Castro, Fidel's brother, opens a new guerrilla front in the Sierra de Cristal Mountains, further intensifying the struggle against Batista's regime. As the resistance gains momentum, the United States suspends shipments of arms to Batista's forces, a significant turning point in the conflict. April arrives, and Castro issues a powerful call for a general revolt against Batista. The people respond, mobilizing in support of the revolution. In May, Batista launches a massive offensive against Castro's guerrillas in the Sierra Maestra Mountains. However, the offensive fails, and Batista's forces suffer heavy casualties at the hands of the determined rebels. December brings a dramatic shift in fortunes. Castro's forces launch a counteroffensive, liberating major cities across Cuba. The tides of change sweep through the island, and on January 1, 1959, Batista flees Cuba, leaving Castro's forces in control of Havana. The days that follow are filled with historic moments. On January 2nd, Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos, two of Castro's trusted commanders, arrive in Havana, receiving a hero's welcome. And on January 5th, Castro himself arrives in the capital, greeted by an awe-inspiring crowd of over 1 million jubilant supporters. In the wake of the Cuban Revolution's success, Fidel Castro and his fellow revolutionaries faced the task of establishing a new government and implementing their vision for a transformed Cuba. Let's explore the events surrounding the formation of the provisional government, the role of Fidel Castro, and the early policies implemented by the revolutionary regime. At Fidel Castro's command, Manuel Urrutia Leo, a politically moderate lawyer, was proclaimed the provisional president of Cuba. Most members of Urrutia's cabinet were from the revolutionary group known as MR-26-7, which Castro himself belonged to. Castro wielded significant influence over Urrutia's regime, which ruled by decree. He ensured that the government implemented policies to tackle corruption and illiteracy, and he sought to remove supporters of the previous Batista regime from positions of power. Despite denying his communist leanings to the press, Castro secretly met with members of the Popular Socialist Party, PSP, to discuss the establishment of a socialist state. These meetings laid the groundwork for the future direction of the Cuban government. In the aftermath of the revolution, a profound desire for justice swept through Cuba. The previous Batista regime had been responsible for the deaths of thousands of Cubans. While Castro and the press initially claimed a death toll of 20,000, a published list of victims shortly after the revolution contained 898 names, with over half of them identified as combatants. Recent estimates suggest the death toll ranged from 1,000 to 4,000. In response to public demands for accountability, Castro played a role in setting up trials to bring those responsible for atrocities to justice. Many executions resulted from these trials, which drew domestic popularity but faced criticism, particularly from the US press, for their fairness. We are not executing innocent people or political opponents. We are executing murderers, and they deserve it. However, tensions emerged between Castro and senior government figures. Castro was angered by the government's decision to close down casinos and brothels, leading to the unemployment of thousands of people. This disagreement resulted in the resignation of Prime Minister José Miró Cardona, who went into exile in the United States and joined the anti-Castro movement. Finally, on February 16, 1959, Castro assumes the role of Prime Minister of Cuba, marking a new era in the country's history. The revolution has triumphed, and a vision of social justice and sovereignty takes center stage. Join us as we journey through exploring the rise of Fidel Castro, witness the determination, sacrifice, and unwavering spirit of a nation that refused to accept oppression and fought for a brighter future.